see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
Hi, it's Edwin Rutsch from the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and today I'm here in dialogue with Allison Goldstein, and we're going to talk about how we can build a culture of empathy. And Allison and I are good friends from a while back, and Allison works at the Compassionate Listening Project, as well as has a project called the Free Listening Project. And could you talk a little bit, just as a way of introduction, just about yourself?
Sure. Like you said, I'm with the Compassionate Listening Project. I'm the managing director and have been officially with them since September. The Compassionate Listening Project started over 20 years ago as a delegation to the Middle East, and we still continue those delegations. What they do is we get groups to go to the Middle East, Israel, and Palestine, and we hold workshops there teaching compassionate listening skills. And then we take those skills out into the community and connect with Israelis and Palestinians, include them in the workshops, and hopefully bring them together to be able to listen with compassion to each other. So that's how we got our start. And then as it became obvious that these skills were something that could translate to other groups and in the community, we started creating workshops for everyone else. Mm-hmm. And so that's a lot of what we do now.
Got a phone there.
Yeah, a lot of what we do is offering workshops throughout North America. And we do have, I think we're offering in 7 different countries, we had compassionate listening workshops. So that's what that organization is. And then the Free Listening Project is more of a grassroots type of group. There's a man in Chicago named Mike Land who was the first one to come up with the idea. And what we do is we hold a cardboard sign that says Free Listening. And we have t-shirts that also say Free Listening. And on the back it says no advice, no judgment, no interruption. And we just go to public places and sit and offer and wait for people to come and talk, and we just listen quietly without judgment.
Well, I'm on your Facebook page. I can actually bring it up on the screen here. So I've got you with Santa Claus, holding your free listening sign.
Yeah.
So
yep. Santa had a lot to share. Who knew?
Yeah, well, that's I think how we got connected. Actually, somehow I'd sent you an email about that or something, and that's how we started getting kind of in dialogue. So mm-hmm. as you know, I'm interested in how do we build a culture of empathy, and you and I have talked, and it's like empathy is not like a term you're like kind of focused on, but it seems to me that your free listening is really about the essence of empathy. It's like to really have empathy, it means to listen deeply with others. And I think that's really, kind of the essence right there for, is if we want to build a culture of empathy, we need to listen to each other.
Definitely. And I would say that the way that empathy plays a role in this is when you get quiet and you're really truly listening to someone, you start to pick up on the nonverbal cues more. And when you're not formulating what you're going to say next, you are taking away your ability to talk out loud. You have to start using your own nonverbal cues to communicate. So you just naturally start communicating on this deeper level without the other person even really knowing it. They start to move towards you and start to kind of express in ways other than just their words. And I think that's where empathy really happens, is in that nonverbal communication that's happening along with the conversation.
Yeah, so you're going and saying, just speak to whatever you're wanting to say. You're just offering a space for people to speak, and you're just pretty quiet, I guess, huh? And just letting them speak to you and starting to pick up on their energies. Or
Right. My goal is to say nothing, and pretty successful at that. Sometimes people will try, they get uncomfortable with the fact that I'm not responding, and they'll kind of wait, and I wait with them, and then they'll just usually pick up the conversation again. So, yeah, I think the deepest moments are in those awkward moments when they're waiting to see if I'll really keep my promise to just listen.
Well, when I'm interviewing people, I listen to what they say. I'm here trying to stimulate this dialogue. And then sometimes I'm trying to follow what they're saying, and then they stop, and then it's like, oh, what do I say next?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, so sometimes I have a little bit of difficulty around that. It's like, oh, I got to
Yeah.
be on the ball here and be ready to, bring up the next question. And so I don't know how that affects list free, the free listing. I guess it's that, I guess I could just say, keep speaking, and I just don't stimulate any more questions.
Right. Or you could wait. You'd be surprised what comes out of someone after that awkward silence, because they're feeling the same kind of tension you are, and they're feeling a need to fill the space too. So that's what kind of propels them to keep going to the next level, is their own awkwardness with it. They'll, just say anything to fill the air, and usually it starts to become more and more honest as they get more anxious about it. So it kind of just naturally takes them there if you just get out of their way. But it's hard, and I think in an interview situation, I mean, you can't just sit there and not say anything. That's not going to work. But you certainly can try to stay out of people's way and just let it come out.
So when you're listening to people, what's kind of going on for you? It's like, what is the sensation within, the dynamics within yourself?
Well, I'm definitely trying to stay completely present with the person, and not be distracted by everything else that's going on. We're usually out in a public place with lots of people walking by, and so that's just an obvious distraction. Then the other bigger distraction is my own thoughts, not just about the people going by, but maybe what the people are thinking about me sitting here with this other person, or just my own judgments about what the person's saying, or a lot of times my judgments about them when they first sit down, and what I think they're going to say and how they're going to say it, and then eventually over time I realize that's changing, and then I even start judging that as I realize that my judgments were wrong. Then I'm thinking about, oh, gee, my judgments were wrong. So I'm just constantly bringing myself back from all those little side conversations I'm having in my own head. And I would say I go out for 3 hours at a time, and usually it takes at least a half hour to quiet my mind. After about a half hour of listening or just sitting, because sometimes no one comes to be listened to, so I'm just sitting and listening to the world. After that, my mind quiets down. It gets the message that there's no place for it here, that I'm not going to get to give my opinion or do anything. So it just kind of finally relaxes and goes, okay. And then I don't have to work so hard at not judging or being distracted. It just all of a sudden I'm just locked in.
So are you kind of like trying to get to a state of just like pure presence without your mind kind of going? It's like your mind starts going. It's like, okay, bring myself back to just being present. And I guess the presence must be a state of feeling, right? It's like you're feeling a certain aesthetic, a certain felt experience of what presence is, maybe. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, I guess. It almost feels like beyond a feeling. Yeah, that's a tough one to answer. Because when you're completely present, you're not really focusing on how it feels. So to say it's a feeling, I'd have to kind of be looking back at it and deciding how it felt, but it really isn't a feeling. You're just there, you're just locked in, and nothing else matters except for there in that moment. And you're just in, I shouldn't say you, but I'm just in complete amazement that it's happening. That's the one thought that just keeps rushing through my head. I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe this person trusts me. I know it just, that this moment is happening. I am just dumbfounded by it every time. Just takes my breath away.
How would you kind of describe the feeling? I mean, yeah, well, the state. I guess that you're not saying it's not a feeling, or if you're not focused on the feeling aspect, it's a state of being, and how do you kind of the contours? I at least for me, I kind of see the world almost in as the feelings or the states of being are kind of within myself, maybe like in a bubble or something, and I can feel different qualities. Like if I'm just like quiet, I just feel into my body, and it's also when I'm present with you, I'm kind of feeling how I'm relating to you, and so I'm kind of wondering what are the, and I use the metaphor kind of contours of a landscape. There's like an emotional awareness landscape. I'm kind of wondering what that landscape looks like to you.
Well, I've been using a comparison to going to the movies, and I don't know if everyone has the same experience about being at the movies, but when I go to the movies, I get completely lost in the movie, and I almost feel like I'm in the screen, and that all of it's happening. I'm not really judging it as an outsider. I'm kind of in it, and I'm in this sense of awe, like, okay, and then what? And then what? What's going to happen now? And I'm not thinking about the bathrooms down the hall or anything else. I'm just right there in that chair. I'm in that movie, and that's all that matters. And that's kind of the state I'm in when I'm sitting there with that person, and I get past, the chatter in my head. Just like in a movie at first, you are like judging and, oh, am I going to like this movie? Or, oh, I can't stand that person, or they're not doing a very good job. But then at some point you get caught up in the story. Yeah. You get caught up in the story, and you just become it.
So it's almost like becoming part. Their story, their being is kind of playing itself out on the screen of your heart and soul, or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah. Because I think that's the key thing. When I go to a movie, I feel like I'm in the movie. There's no space between the chair and the screen. I start to become it, and I don't know if everyone feels it that intensely, but that's certainly how I feel. And so when I'm done listening to someone and they get up and walk away, I have a little bit of a stunned feeling, like there was a reality shift, because I'm right there with them, and then they're leaving. Just like when the movie's over, it's like, okay, now what do I do? And you walk out of the room, and it was dark and quiet and focused, and all of a sudden you're walking out into the bright lights, and the world is moving fast, and it's a real shift in consciousness.
Yeah, it's I have that even in doing interviews. Sometimes I feel like there's this connection, and I don't know how to transition from that sense of connection to another state of being, and I feel very awkward, as if it's like painful to kind of pull myself away from that connection.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, how did you get started with this? What kind of brought you to wanting to do this? Listening so deeply.
Well, I wasn't a very good listener, and although people told me I was a good listener my whole life, I was the one that people came to talk to, and I usually was the one that would mediate in my family. Even though I was the youngest in my family, I tended to be the one that would say, okay, we all need to get together and talk this out. And then I would, encourage people to talk and share honestly how they felt. And so I was always able to engage people in conversations and really go to a deeper level. But I also was steering the conversation a lot and, you know, injecting myself into their story, and you know what they would say would remind me of something in my life, and then I would start to go off on my own. And so I got to the point where I wondered, you know, how much I was missing of what they had to say. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend who finally shared with me how isolated she felt, not just with me, but with people in general, that she wasn't feeling heard, that she was the type of person that had to collect her thoughts, and she had to pause while she was doing that, and people took that, including me, as her being done. And so then we would jump right in and start talking, and then she would be left unfinished with her thought. And so over the years, a lot of resentment was building up towards me and everyone else that was doing that. But she had also learned how to use that as a way to not have to share her feelings. She knew if she, on some lower level, she knew if she just stopped talking, people would do all the work. So, I mean, it worked both ways. But I started working with her. That was my first real awareness of actively listening, or intentionally listening, and just being quiet. And then the other thing was that I belonged to a women's group where there were just a few women in the group that dominated the group. And normally that would have been me, but they were actually better at it than I was. And so each week I went to this group and got more and more frustrated because I wasn't getting my chance basically to dominate, I guess. And so at some point, one meeting, I just, in my head, just went, forget it. There's just no point. I'm never going to get a chance. And I just said, you know, I'm just not even going to talk. That, you know, if that's what you think, if you don't care, I'm just not even going to talk. And so I sat there feeling like I was punishing them. And after about a half hour, it started to dawn on me how peaceful it was to not be preparing myself to talk. And I just went from there. It was like a light went on. And I thought, I need to figure out how this works. I started going back to the meetings deliberately not to talk so that I could practice it. And then I thought there must be other people in the world that have discovered this, and just started searching on the internet and connecting with people, and found out there's a huge community of people who value listening.
Well, I'm giving a little space now. Yeah, well, that's the thing with talking. I kind of feel like I'm in environments sometimes and I try to talk, and then I feel like people aren't listening, and I'm kind of like struggling to kind of be heard. And it's kind of a painful experience for me.
Yeah.
And so what I would kind of be wondering about is, if you're just listening to everyone, are you kind of like not being heard yourself? You know, or are you kind of being suppressed? Are your feelings and needs and values kind of being suppressed and not brought to the, you know, to the conversation?
Well, there are definitely challenging relationships in my life that I am not all that successful at the whole listening thing. I mean, they end up just being free listening sessions. And to be honest, I don't get a lot back from the person. And, you know, I actually got really frustrated when I first started doing this and listening deeply to people. I realized that some of the people closest to me, that there seemed to be no point where they would realize I wasn't talking. I could go for hours and they would keep talking, and they didn't seem to notice that I had stopped talking. And that was incredibly painful to realize that about some of my relationships. And to be honest, those relationships haven't changed over the years since I've been doing this. They still don't seem to have noticed. And, you know, I free listening doesn't cure everything. It doesn't, you know, it just gives you an opportunity to be present with someone. And, you know, like anything else, it takes two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like you want to be heard in some situations as well. And I mean, I see, well, I see that it's kind of like a biological need of people to be heard and to be seen. And, you know, in child development work, it's even kind of shown that for, you know, children to be, you know, brought up and to be kind of grounded and balanced in their emotional well-being, that it's important for them to be heard and seen, and for their being to be reflected back to them by others.
Yes, to be reflected back. And I don't think it necessarily has to be that you're heard. And one thing I do is I've surrounded myself with a community of people who are committed to listening. So if I ever really need to feel heard, I connect with those people that I know have that intention. But when I'm with the people that don't have that intention, I think what I've discovered is the real pain in it. It isn't that I need them to stop talking and now listen to me like it's my turn. I don't feel like there's room for me in their conversation. I don't feel like, how do I put it?
They want to include you in your life, in their life, kind of. I mean,
Well,
that's what I'm.
I feel a bit like a sounding board, and that if I got up and left and they put another human being there, that you know, they probably would keep talking, and it, you know, and so there's talking about reflecting. There's something about the way someone talks to you that gives you the opportunity to reflect back who you are, and you know, talking about that nonverbal communication. Someone who's just really in their habit energy, where they're just talking, telling their story, and really not even aware of the other person, that this is where the empathy comes in. They're not picking up on your nonverbal cues, and so it really takes away my ability to communicate back. I'm willing to listen, but if they're not willing to even see me and pick up on those cues, I can't even give them like reinforcing, validating kind of information. I have no part in what they're doing. They're just on their own talking. So, and I've never had that happen in an official free listening capacity. When I'm listening in public, they want to be engaged with me, and they're reading my nonverbal cues, and they're going with it. They want me there. That's why they sat down.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a real sense of connection there. Then that yeah, for me, it's sometimes like the most intimate relationships are the hardest. Like, you know, just in terms of growing up, you know, my mother, Jenny, you know, bless her heart. I mean, it's like, you know, she talks and talks and talks, and I kind of have that same sense that, you know, I could, you know, I mean, sometimes I even like put the, I'm saying this on the public, but, you know, I've like put the phone down, and it doesn't matter, you know, because it just kind of goes on and on. So,
well, and I would say that those relationships, that's, they lack intimacy, and that's what makes them the hardest. They're relationships that you want intimacy, and the intimacy isn't there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain level of intimacy, and it's like wanting more, you know. I mean, there's, so, yeah. So, well, do you have any other thoughts about, you know, building a culture of empathy, you know, kind of in the broad sense? Like I was saying, you've kind of focused on this listening kind of component, which I think is like really kind of a core part of, you know, maybe perhaps even one of the most important parts of empathy, and kind of at a broader level. Do you have any ideas about that? I guess you also do the compassionate listening, and that's a whole program. I even have their book, the book here. Yay.
You can buy it on our website.
And The website is
compassionatelistening.org.
and I'm bringing it up on the screen here, and we see the screen, the photo roll here of all the different places. I mean, it looks like in Africa and Berlin, and you're saying Israel, Middle East. So
yes,
it's really.
Yeah. In fact, we have a delegation. Our Middle East delegation is leaving on March 18th. And then we have we're having another German Jewish delegation, and that is, I'm checking right here because I don't have the date on the top of my head, June 15th through the 21st. So there's still plenty of time to sign up for that. And that's on our webpage too. But to answer your question about, where do we take this kind of, or how do you, what was your question?
Yeah, just how do we build a culture of empathy? How do we deepen empathy kind of at a larger societal level?
Yeah, I'm leaving that to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've felt a little bit of, what's the word? It's not really shame, but like inadequacy with all these great people in the world that are activists, and they get out there and they fight for peace and they fight for everything, and they create real change, and I've always thought those are the real important people, and I've kind of devalued what I want to do. And just more recently I realized I just want to do it one person at a time, and listening is empathy, or it's certainly the door to empathy. And so I'm going to let everyone else do what they do, and if that's on a global level, and to round a lot of people up and get them working en masse, I'm so grateful for them. But for me, I just want to keep going out my front door and looking for someone to listen to.
Well, I like to look at metaphors. So, for example, empathy is often seen as standing in someone else's shoes, looking through someone else's eyes. And for me, empathy is like a cornucopia. And I was wondering if you had a personal metaphor of what empathy is like, or even what it is that you're doing. What is it a metaphor? If it's if it was a type of land, or a type of animal, or just, I don't know, a type of machine, or just anything.
Yeah, well, I'd have to say, for starters, I don't really feel, for me, that it's looking through someone else's eyes. It's just, for me, it's just being present within their perception, kind of like the movie again. I don't feel like when I'm watching a movie, I'm looking through, the character's eyes. I'm looking through my eyes as if I were part of that experience.
Yes, that's and really the metaphor then is that movie is that you're saying. It's like letting, it's that empathy is like going to the movies. It's
yes.
It's like letting the narrative, the story play itself out on this, our soul or something.
Right. Yeah. Without trying to steer it, because the movie is already written. I really don't have any control over that movie I'm watching. It's going where it's going. And, that's a great way to look at other people's lives, is, more like you're watching a movie, and they're the script writers, and we're just watching.
Yeah, actually, I kind of like that metaphor just kind of letting other people's lives, emotions, values, feelings play themselves out on us, and just be there to watch and enjoy the narrative, the story. Yeah. Well, this is great. Is there any, maybe we can bring it to a close, but is there any final thoughts that you have around this that you really are burning, feel burningly want to share?
I think I have. I never have a final thought. I never label it a final thought, because there's always more. So no, I don't have anything else.
Okay, so it's kind of like we have to arbitrarily make a cut here.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, well, this screen here actually looks a lot like a movie, Because I have both of us on the screen at one time, so both of our lives are playing out on this movie, and I think this is just an intermission right now.
Oh, no, no intermission.
No intermission either, huh?
No.
Okay, well, I'll bring the recording to an end right now. Let me
see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.